Ruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem B'Shem Yigin Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Smith Shlita, the lachas of Dini Chatzitzah from netilas yadayim. Dr. Chatzitzah sponsoring a shir called Yigin Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
Questions of chatzitza come up in different forms. We had Shala, someone found a little wax from the Isha found wax from the Shabbos candles. And during the seudah, do you have to wash over? Is that a chatzitza? Is ink? A person finds ink, pen ink on his hand, bandaids. Someone asked, he said he never thought of it, but after you make kiddush, typically there's some wine left on your hand. Do you have to rinse off the wine before you wash until yadayim? Is the wine a chatzitza? Stitches and casts and band-aids. The kids, we have a nice agenda, but the point that I think we have to clarify is like to quote someone who says, what is a shaila about? A little bit ink, a little wax, it's so little, you ignore it, don't worry about it, you're not makbid. So as we'll see today, that's not as simple as it seems, because the emes is, we know that regarding tevilas noshim, where there's a big focus on removing everything. But the question is, okay, that's tevilas noshim, that's a deraisa, and there taka we're much more careful. The question is, netilas yadayim is only derabanan. I mean, it's not only derabanan, it's one of the takanas of Shlomo HaMelech, but it's still not a deraisa. Maybe there's more leeway regarding chatzitzas. So as we try to do always, we're going to try to clarify one point that I think really brings us to the understanding of the netilas yadayim. And hopefully once we have that understanding, we could go through many shilas. Really the concept of using water, water treatment, if you want to call it that you use water to make something good, is something that we know in three other places in halacha. We have the mitzvah deraisa of tefila, taka for noshim. When I say tefila, I mean stam tefila noshim. Then we have the mitzvah deraisa of tevilas keilim. And then you have a third water treatment, and that's called kashering. That's the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Ayin Hamad Beis, also the Raisa. We learn from in Parshas Matos. So there are three types of times that we use water: tefila, tevilas keilim, and kashering. And now my simple question is, netilas yadayim is the fourth. Okay, drabanan, but it's also using water. What is netilas yadayim most similar to? Tefila, tevilas keilim, or kashering? So I think it'll be very helpful if we point out a fundamental difference between tefila and kashering. Now let me give you a very practical example. Caterers will appreciate this. When you're in the business, you need a specific big, huge pot or a specific size. And you get it, you find one that a goyish caterer is selling it's a used. Okay, so now, it's a goyish keilim, but then again you have an opportunity of two mitzvahs deraisa. You buy it from him, and then of course you first kasher it, and after you kasher it, you tevel it. Now, the logistics sometimes are daunting, because if you have a big pot, it's hard to kasher in one time. But if you're allowed to just kasher by putting into a boiling water, you can't fit a big pot into boiling water. Or you want to blowtorch it. Bekitza, are you allowed to kasher something piecemeal, part at a time? And then when you finish kashering, you want to tevel it, you have the second question. Can you tevel something part at a time? The big pot doesn't fit into the mikveh, you do part at a time. So this is clear, and that's no shaila about it, that regarding kashering, you're allowed to kasher part at a time. Regarding tefila, you can't put half at a time. If you really have to tevel it and it doesn't fit into the mikveh, take it to a kosher for tefila lake. Manishtana, what's the chilik? So this is the point that we have to understand. The concept of kashering is to purge it, is to remove all the blias. So even if you do it in 10 different times, you blowtorch something, you don't do the whole keilim in one time. You do it carefully, make sure you cover every area. But as long as you get out the blias from every part of the pot, it's kosher. Why do you have to do it at one time? Adrabah, you do it slowly and meticulously, you're better off. But tefila, whether it's tefila or tevilas keilim, we know there's something called a chatzitza. In Parshas Mitzayir, v'rochas b'sarai b'mayim es kol b'sarai, zog the Gemara in Sukkah Davav and Ervan Dav Dalid, that there can't be any chatzitza regarding your tefillah. Now, chatzitza, the problem with chatzitza is because part of it wasn't teviled. And we know, as the Rambam puts it in Hilchas Mikvois, Aleph Halacha Beis, whenever you have to have tefillah, it has to be the entire guf, all or nothing, even one hair sticking out, and the whole tefillah is possible. You'll say, okay, I got it. There was a hair sticking out, or there was a chatzitza. Okay, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. I'll take off the chatzitza, and I'll tevel that part, or I'll tevel that hair. So that's what's called in America a joke. You can't add up 2 zeros. Tefillah, by definition, is all or nothing. You're missing something? Try again. Kashering, you could do it piecemeal. So here we have 2 different, outlooks. Tefillah is all or nothing, and kashering, nishkeferlach, you could do part at a time. Now, question is, what's the halacha regarding the netilas yadayim? What is the yadayim more similar to? Is it like kashering? Then maybe chatzitza, you could do it afterwards. Or is it more like like tefillah? So the truth is, in svara, netilas yadayim is not tefillah. You're only washing your hands. But it's sicher not kashering. You're not burning out treifus. What I would say is the following, and here we're going to use this for the rest of the shir. In one important aspect, the netilas yadayim is very similar to tefillah. To quote the Gemara in Gittin Daf Tezvav Amud Beis, yadayim ein tohiris lachatzoyin. Just like tefillah, it's all or nothing. You can't do piecemeal. The Gemara says, and that's the Shulchan Aruch pasuk like that. We'll soon see that you must wash the entire hand. But, and here's the big but, and that's the aside of today, you don't really have to wash the entire hand. I think the right way to describe it is you have to wash the hand, the part of the hand that might or can touch the bread that you're going to eat. If you have part of the hand that will definitely not touch the bread, as I'll soon prove, you don't have to wash. So it's certainly not kashering. It's more like tefillah, but it's very limited. You only have to wash what might touch the bread. And I'm going to show you 2 halachas, both lemaisa, and then we'll apply it to specifics. If I were to ask you, how much of the hand do you have to wash when netilas yadayim? You say, what kind of every child knows you have to wash until the wrist. Not pashut. In Chul and Daf Kuf Vav, there are shitas, and as the Rishonim explained, there are actually 3 shitas. How much of the hand do you have to wash? There is one sheet, like we know, you have to wash the entire hand until the wrist. There's another sheet that says, no, not the hand, just the finger, the 5 fingers. There's a third sheet in Rishonim, not even the whole finger. Typically, the finger has 3 joints, so the middle joint, in other words, really 2/3 of the finger you have to wash. What's shot? In fact, the Zoya has a remez that for netilas yadayim you have to wash the yad. What's yad? So every finger, as I told you, has 3 joints. So 4 fingers times 3 is 12. The thumb only has 2. So 12 plus 2 is 14. The Zoya is makel just to wash the fingers. And some say even less, not the whole finger. What's pshat? How you talking? Teretz is very pashut. Because when a civilized person eats, touches bread, only with the fingers, or only with the upper part of the fingers. Why do you have to wash the hand? Why do I have to wash the palm of the hand? So in other words, although as we'll see, la halacha, we wash the whole hand, but the fact that you only miyikid, according to 2 out of 3 shitas, you don't have to wash the hand, indicates it's not the hand per se, it is what touches the bread. But we could do much, much better. Let's say a person has a bad cut. So he has a bandaid on it, and the bandaid keeps it together. And he's told, don't remove the bandaid, otherwise it won't heal properly, it'll be painful. So he knows one thing, for the next day or 2, he's not going to move the bandaid. And it's a nice big bandaid, not just a typical bandaid, a nice big bandaid. Now the shaila is, can he wash the netilas yadayim with a bandaid on his finger? Bandaid, we'll soon speak about a cast, a splint. So regarding tefillah, it's a big problem. A bandaid is a chatzitza, a splint is a chatzitza. So if it's ever negeya, then you have to ask an experienced Rav who will guide you. But today we're not learning hilchas tefillah. But regarding the netilas yadayim, the halach in Shulchan Aruch is that if you have to keep the bandaid on for a day or 2, you could wash as it is. Why? Chatzitza. Don't forget, The Gemara says, makes a dramatic statement, that whatever pasel chatzitza by tefila, pasels by netilas yadayim. We'll soon see the details. But we do equate netilas yadayim with tevila. So why all of a sudden a bandaid or the like is okay? So here we find an incredible kiddush of the Rosh, but all the Paiskim Paskin like it. The Rosh in Chulin, Perek Ches, Siman Yud Ches, has a shayla if you have a ratiyah. Now ratiyah is an old-fashioned bandaid. A ratiyah on the hand, Zok the Rosh, just ignore that part of the hand, wash the rest of the hand, and ignore the ratiyah, don't wash the ratiyah. Frek the Rosh on himself, you can't wash half a hand, half is lavdafka, you can't leave out part of it. How could you not wash the place that the ratiyah is on? Zok the Rosh, since you cannot remove the ratiyah, because it's painful, as he said the Lashon, because it causes tsar, it's koyevle, so that part of the hand, that the band is on top of it, and he's used a pretty sharp Lashon, it's like that part, chas v'shalom, was amputated. Zok the Rosh, a beautiful lamdis. If a person doesn't wash part of the hand, so he didn't wash the whole hand, but that part of the hand that you can't remove it because it's painful, is like it's not there. So in fact, he is washing the whole hand. Grada, that part of the hand is not chayiv netilas. So it's not the pshat, you have rachmanis, you have a bad cut, so wash with a chatzitza, chas v'shalom. That part of the hand that has the bandaid is like it's not there. So you're washing the whole hand? In other words, to put it even more bluntly, does anybody think you have to wash the elbow when for bread? Teretz says, why elbow? Doesn't touch the bread, right? The teretz says if you have a bandaid and that area will definitely not touch the bread because you won't take it off because it's koyev. I mean, you could take it off, but you won't. So that's not part of the halachic hand for the netilas yadayim. Oy bazay, it's masik midvash. Because even though we find in Hilchais tefila, it's you're there, kuf tzadik ches sif yud, that a ratiyah on the hand is a chatzitza for nashim, that's because the chiyuv tefila is the whole guf. And this is part of the guf. But regarding netilas yadayim, it's not the whole guf, it's not even the whole hand. It's whatever touches the bread, like I told you. If this won't touch the bread, no chiyuv netilah whatsoever. So the Rosh is touring off a chiddush. If there's something on the hand that you will not remove because it's painful, then that's not chayiv netilah. It's mamash like the definition that we said, you have to wash the part of the hand that might touch the bread. Now, we're not makel just washing the fingers, even though some hold like that. But definitely, whatever you can get to is okay. Now, the Heilige Chazanish in our Chaim Chavdal Chafei wonders about this rush. What do you mean kinektor etzbay? Lamai says finger's not amputated. How could you not wash? And why is it different than tefila? So he writes it like we said the teretz, which really the Rosh says, but he puts it in parentheses. I'm not sure why. And he says maybe the pshat is because that's not chayiv in netilah. V'advarim kashim l'havinam. I don't understand why is it different than tefila. But the truth is the Shulchan Aruch in the end of Kuf Samach Beis and all the Paiskim Paskin like that whatever is under a bandaid that can't be removed, you don't have to wash. In fact, the Pri Megadim in Kuf Samach Aleph, Sif Cotton Beis, and Psham Zalman is quoted as saying, even if there's a bandaid on Roiv Diyad, you can still wash the rest of it with a bracha. Because no din of Rubik Kulei, because the Nechid Netilah now is on the small part of the hand. Now, here I must add a big kasha. Because it's true, in Kuf Samach Beis, the Shulchan Aruch quotes the Rosh. But when you learn Kuf Samach Aleph, Hilchas Chatzitza, the Mechaber gives an example of ratiyah, that a ratiyah is a chatzitza. So the kasha is, Kuf Samach Aleph, ratiyah is a chatzitza. Kuf Samach Beis, he holds its mutter. So like the Mishnah Berurah, it's not a kasha at all. A bandaid that he puts on just for precaution, he wants to cover over an unsightly wart, but he'll take it off, that's a regular chatzitza. Kuf Samach Beis, where he won't take it off because of koyevle, that's his regular hand and is not chayiv in netilah. So here we have another raya to this yisoid. First of all, the fact that you only have to wash the fingers like many shitas, and l'rosh's chiddush, that basically the netilas yadayim is fundamentally different. It's not washing the whole, necessarily even the whole hand. It's whatever touches the bread. But the klal is, and that's the Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Samach Aleph, Aleph based on Gemara Chul and Kuvav, Kol tzorach lizor b'chatzitza, but don't play again with chatzitza. Shekol davar shechoitzitz b'tevila, choitzitz b'netila. So the basic klal is, although it's only the rabbanon, tevilas yadayim, but it has the same chumrah like tevila. You have to take off all chatzitzas, and basically chatzitza is ma'akiv. The only exception is what you can't take off because of a pain is like that part of the hand is not chayiv and netilas, and wash the rest of it and make a bracha gesund tehet. Now let's apply this lemaisa. So first of all, the Mishnah in the beginning of Kuf Samach Aleph says, check your hands before you wash for chatzitzas. Now this is not a nervin issue, but don't forget, even if you find a chatzitza, so not only the netilas puzzle, but it's the bracha of atala. And just like we check our tzitzis before we make a bracha on them, because they might be puzzled, it's the bracha of atala. So make sure there's no chatzitza. I mean, you don't have to spend an hour checking, just a casual look. But the question is, what are we looking for? So now we're going to go step by step, any possible chatzitza. So one thing I think is clear, it's lav dafka, a big, huge chatzitza. Ink, we'll soon see, wax, paint, glue, even though it's small, might be a chatzitza. Why do I say might? So let's learn the Gemara. In Sukkah, I mentioned, and Erevin, the Gemara says, Dvar Torah, only rubai umakbid olav chaytzitz. Min ha-Torah, regarding tefila, that's min ha-Torah. So there's a chatzitza is pasal deraisa by tefila, but the same deraisa, halacha ma'ishmi Sinai, it's only a real chatzitza. What's a real chatzitza? Rubai, most of the body, and makbid, which is almost hard to find. But midrabanan, rubai is always a chatzitza, even einay makbid, because it's most of the guf, and miyut, even a little amount. If it's makbid, chatzitza. Now, the question is, how do you understand this? Midaraisa, rubai is okay. Even midarabanan, we'll soon see, l'chayra, miyut, a little bit, she'enei makbid, is also good. Even b'di'evet. Miyut she'enei makbid is okay. Ayr is a chatzitza. You're not washing your whole hand. Or worse yet, by tefila, there's a rubai she'enei makbid, but she didn't tevel the entire guf. How does it work? So Rashi in Erevin, and in Sukkah that I mentioned, it's also Shabbos and Zayin, says a lashon that since it's so insignificant, it's a rubai, it's a miyut she'enei makbid, kigufai chashiv, it's like the regular part of the body. Rashi says there's lashon in all three places. Since it's so insignificant, it's bottled to the guf, and it's like part of the guf. So Rashi is saying a simple lumdus. You have to tevel entire guf. Well, guess what? An insignificant chatzitza that's miyut she'enei makbid is part of you. I'll give you a l'sabra sa'oizen. I know it's not a perfect mashal. If a person has a cut hair on his face when he tevels by mistake, so it's a chatzitza. It's blocking his face, right? So why don't we say all hair, all beards are chatzitza? There it's no. This is part of you. A stray hair is not part of you, right? It's pashut. A chatzitza of miyut she'enei makbid, for some reason, it's considered part of you. It's bottled. I saw this very pronounced. The Har Tzvi and Yeridei Kuf Nun Tes, someone asked him, how does it work? The miyut she'enei makbid is the tevilas kosher b'di'evet. Chatzitzah we take off all chatzitzas, but b'di'evet is kosher. So this person was obviously a lamd, and he says the stick is if you have even one hair sticking out of the mikvah, you're not yoytze because it's not called gufa under the water. But when you go under the water, so chatzitza doesn't bother us so much. So Atzvi says it's a nice lamdis, but Rashi zok nishtazai. Rashi in three places says, what's the svara? Kegufa, it's bottled. So the shayl again in Kuf Samach came back to the same svara. So the Atzvi politely says, you're missing the point. Rashi says the svara is it's bottled, and therefore you understand when a hair is sticking out, even one hair, it's possibly deraisa. Why? because you can't say bottle. One hair's out, you're not getoivelt, all or nothing. But if you have the entire guf toiveling, just as a chatzitza miyat she'eini makbid, so the whole guf toivel. What do you mean the whole guf toivel? The chatzitza is part of me. Now we're going to learn the Shulchan Aruch, as they say, and we'll, like I say in America, we'll savor the flavor. It's amazing how the Shulchan Aruch put all this into just a few lines. In Kuf Samach Aleph Aleph, the Mechaber says, step number 1, tzarech lizoy mechatzitza, shekol davar shechoitzes betevila, choitzes benetila. Now that's a pretty frightening statement, because we know how careful we are regarding tefillah. But the Mechaber says, treat netilas yadayim like tefillah. Although the chiluk is apparent, tefillah is daraisa, netilas yadayim is darabanan, but zok the levush of anort, called tikkun darabanan, kein daraisa tikkun. And the first mashal the Mechaber gives is important to almost every netila. And he says, kol tsoya, and this tsoya does not mean literally, it means any dirt, shetachas hatzipoirin, that's under the finger, the fingernail dirt, shaloi keneged habasa, that's not keneged habasa, and I'll explain in a second, or batzek, is always a chatzitza. Now let me explain. Typically, when a person, cuts his nails properly, so the nails never extend beyond the finger itself. Now, I'll give you a very easy way to gauge this. Look at your finger and with the palm of the hand facing you. So you should hold it like this, like I'm doing. Those that are listening, you just hold your finger up with the palm facing you. You won't see nails sticking out unless your nails are long. Then you know it's your little delinquent in your cutting. The nail's supposed to be kept with the basa level. If the nails are protruding when you hold your finger like this, your nails, you can see a nail sticking above, that's shaloi keneged habasa. That's too long. So the way the poskim explain, regular dirt that's under normal size fingernails that don't extend above the basa is not a chatzitza, believe it or not. Because it's normal, it's natural to have that type of dirt. Now, of course, tsoya mamish is always a chatzitza. And the truth is, even anything else but that dirt, lamashal batzek, the Mechaber says, even if it's regular size fingernails that doesn't go above the basa, it's a chatzitza. Because you don't want to have the dirt, tsoya, not batzek, nothing. Normal dirt is acceptable, it's socially acceptable. So this is the klal. That would be a miyat she'eini makbid, and here's the big kiddush. Even though regarding tefillah, we remove even that, remove everything, but regarding tefillah, but netilas, the poskim on mekel, we don't clean that dirt if it's not too much or it's not exterior type of dirt like batzek. Batzek, zok Rav Vazna, no one's supposed to have batzek under his fingernail. So even if it's a normal size fingernail, it's a chatzitza. But normal dirt, and that's taka the minig, we don't clean our fingernails when we wash tefillas yadayim. Shaloi kineged habasa, that normal dirt is okay. So as we'll see, there are chilukim between tefillah and tefillas yadayim, and this is one of them. In other words, we don't want people to get too nervous. As long as there's no outside dirt, it's okay. I also should mention, some Nebuch asked me this, he was in a veilus, Toyashleishim, and an oval, there's an issa of an oval cutting his fingernails. Is that a chatzitza? So as long as so you don't cut the nails, you shouldn't cut the nails, maybe if he's really desperate, but we don't cut nails during a veilus. But what we told him is the main focus is not the long nails, okay. Because we're not choishish for keilim l'katzes kikatus dummy, the nail's not the problem. But just clean the fingernails from any dirt. That's taka the issue. So basically, this is a miyat she'eini makbid, and there are more taka spells out. That's why we're not noyig to clean the fingernails entirely, because a miyat she'eini makbid, if you're certain it's she'eini makbid, it's okay, as opposed to tefillah when we're choishish. Now, the next question we always hear is someone, if let's say a situation that most people are makbid, but he said, I'm not makbid, I guarantee you. So, l'chayra, we would say, well, if he's not makbid, fine. But that's not true. Dr. Mishtabur says, if cutting zayin, sin, and I think the hezbis pashit. Why tak is a miyat she'eini makbid okay? So Rashi, it becomes part of your guf. It's like you. If the whole welt is makbid, so that means not part of you. Europe's an interesting fellow. Maybe he wants to look iluyish, so he keeps all these things. But you can't say it's part of you if it's not part of a normal person. So a miyat she'eini makbid, if even though It's miyat hamakbid, and he says, I'm not makbid, but l'daitay. What's a little more tricky if I cared. Most people are not makbid. Let's say the fingernails, the dirt under the fingernails. And he's makbid, he's a real mafunik. So we could say, listen, if it mamish bothers you, taka, you're makbid, then it's a problem. And apparently that's why the Mishnah Berurah and Sifka and Yud seems to say, even though no one's makbid, if you're makbid, remove it. But I must say the Rav, Shulchan Aruch, and Sif Gimel is mekel. And maybe he held that since the Veld B'derech Klal is not makbid, it becomes part of a normal hand, normal finger. So you have at least a kula regarding that. Question. An Isha going to a chasana, they put on nail polish. Okay. Then she comes until she yadayim to wash. Oh, what am I doing? I just put on nail polish. Is that a chatzitza? So the truth is, nail polish is definitely a miyut she'enei makbid. But the emphasis is more than that. It's not just einei makbid, I'll overlook it. This is Lanoi. She wants it like that. And indeed, the Shulchan Aruch and the end of Siv Beis says this very shaila about nail polish. It's not just einei makbid. It's Lanoi. And we understand very well, Lanoi is definitely bottled to the guf. So that's part of a fingernail. The only issue begins when, I'm sorry, and I should mention the Orletziyah, Memvav Hey, and the Chutshani and Hilchas Nida Taka says that nail polish is not a chatzitza. The only problem begins when it starts to peel, so it's partially on and partially off. That not only is not Lanoi, that's already a makbid. So Taka Rav Ozna in his Shurei Hilchas Nida, Kuf Tzadik Ches Yud Zayin, and Chutshani both say, if it's starting to peel, so then that's Taka, not only it's not Lanoi, it's a makbid, and you have to remove the rest of it. We have a question, people are working with their hands, whether it's a painter, a plumber, electrician, each have their own special dirt that becomes a chatzitza. They want to have lunch, and they look at their hands, it'll take a half hour to get off the dirt. There goes a lunch break. So here we have a kiddush of the Rishonim, not a Gemara, but it's the Rishonim. It's Paskin, and now with Kuf Samachal Seed Beis, that basically, if someone is an uman of any sort, the Shulchan Aruch speaks about a tabach, a shoichet, someone that sells fats. Bekitza, he has, because of his profession, he has a stain, and the Mechaber gives a mashal of a tzaba, a painter. Naturally, he has paint on his hands. And he wants to have lunch, so he has to take off all the paint, take him a long time. So the Mechaber says that if that's your profession and this is the dirt of your profession, then ignore it. Magen Avraham says, let's say you have two jobs. He moonlights. He's a tavach by day and he's a moich shuman at night. So both of them are okay. Why? Pashit. Because he's not makbid. We said batla daitoi. Batla daitoi is individuals. But an uman, a painter, is a group of me'atzmai. A plumber has his own grease that he can't get off. So we have a new halacha, a new heta, a kula of a uman. I mean, uman is lav dafka. Uman, is any type of person that has, because of his job, he has that problem of that chatzitza. Now let's go further. In the middle of a seudah, a person found wax dripping on his hand. Now this could be Noshim Leil Shabbos, it could be Matzoi Shabbos, those that make Havdalah and wash Malav Malka. It's soon Chanukah is coming, you have a dripping from the candle. Bekitza, he already washed the Moitzi, and he found little dripping of wax on his hand. So I think it's understandable that wax on one's hand is a makbid. Maybe if it's a miyut, but it's makbid. No one wants to have wax on his hand. It's not part of the hand. And that's taka why I taka saw there's a sefer that has all these points that people overlook. Ma'ari Yishenim, he says that be careful that there shouldn't be wax on your hands when you wash. Although it's a small amount, it's a miyut hamakbid. Now I'll ask you a question, and you have to think before you answer. Let's say he did find wax in the middle of the seudah. Does he have to wash over? And if he does, he has to make a new bracha. So the chari has to wash over, because lamaisa it was a miyut hamakbid. It's only a chatzitza level drabanan, okay, but it's still possible. The whole yadayim is drabanan, okay, but so what? You didn't wash. You didn't wash. Do you have a chatzitza midrabanan on your hand? That's the chari pasha. But the next question is, do you have to always wash over? So now a trained paisik will say, please tell me where you found that wax dripping. If he found it on the finger, he's got a problem. If he found it on the palm or the hand on this part, but not the fingers, you can't make another bracha. Maybe the halach is like 2 of the 3 shitas, they only have to wash the fingers. So regarding rewashing, l'chumra we rewash, why not? But regarding a bracha, it's only when you're certain you are on yait with the first netilas. So you have to ask the person, where do you find your wax? On the fingers, wash over with the bracha. Below the fingers, wash over without a bracha. Because don't forget, this is a reality that it's not so clear that you have to wash the entire hand. We're machmir, very good. When it comes to suffix brachas, be careful. Grada the Chatzitzah and its cotton base as a kiddush, which we can understand now. You're talking about roiv or miyat. Roiv what? Roiv the hand or roiv the fingers? Bekhilik, just about 50% of the area. So the Chatzitzah, we have to be machmir that the whole chiyuv the tevila is only the fingers. So if you have roiv of the fingers, it's like roiv of the hand. Because again, the shita of only fingers is not nit halacha. And I'll tell you an interesting chiddush, you might find surprising, but it's not. If someone has to ask you, he has to wash tevilas yadayim, either on Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av, he has to eat, but he has to wash, he has to eat bread. How much do you have to wash of the hand when you're washing for bread? And that's not a typical question, Baruch Hashem. But the poskim all say, he should wash the whole hand. We only washed only the fingers regarding negavasa and ashiyotza. That's because ruach ra is only on the fingers. But netilas yadayim, since there's a sheet that you have to wash the whole hand, so that washing the whole hand is not a rechita shel tainik, it's a rechita shel mitzvah. So we tanze beit chassid sort of. We try to do things right. So wash the whole hand. Yom Kippur Tisha B'Av. But there got to be brachas and everything else. We have to know mi'ikad din. It is only on the fingers. Crazy glue, that today it's a real problem. People do put a little glue on and they can't even see it to get it off. But crazy glue is like the wax, Takadim Ari Yishenim speaks about regular glue, and that's a chatzitza. Even miyat, because it's makbid. Paint is the same miyat hamakbid unless you're a painter. If someone's tried to scrub off the stain and there's a little bit left, so we have a very important bir halacha in the beginning of Kuf Samach Aleph, and I quote, even though miyat hamakbid is a problem, but ma'at min ma'at is not a problem. Why do I stress this? Because you have to realize that, some people get too involved with chatzitzas or chumras bechlal, and then it becomes from a mitzvah to OCD. The Ramban, the Heilige Ramban, regarding chatzitza of Noshim, Daraisa, he says, Loi toy v'yoysa oda machma yoysa midai u'mechapez acha asveikes livsol tevilas b'davakal ki kiven she'ein l'dava soif. Person has to be normal and balanced, well balanced. Chatzitzas is a problem, but excessive chatzitzas is a bigger problem. So, miyat hamak is a problem, ma'at min amat is negligible. I guess we could quote the words of the Chayv Savavas that has to be said in our door of Nervin. Hazahiris, what's the most important thing? Shleiter b'li zoher. Don't be too worried. That's the only thing you have to worry about. You have to worry about why I'm worrying, like he says. So overly cautious is no good. To take a mitzvah of tefillah or even netilas yadayim and turn it into an ordeal, into a torture, is a terrible disservice. Yiddishkeit is all about dachri noyam. So if something is too difficult, then reassess if you're really doing the right thing. A fingernail typically is not a chatzitza, even if it's long. But if a nail is hanging, so then it's a whole different shaila. And basically, if it's tzipoyer and shapirsa ruba, most of it comes off, is okay. Because the water gets to the place where the nail is cut. A slight cut, the place can that maybe the water didn't get through to that area. So a slight nail hanging is worse than a nail that's really hanging. But certainly, la halacha, if it's hanging a nail, you wash as it is and keep it as it is. During the week, you tear it off. Shabbos, better leave it. A fascinating question is the question that Nashim ask about washing with rings on. Because the Metzias is, you take off the rings with netilas yadayim, you put it someplace, then after you make a hamוציא, where's the ring? You can't find it. Did it go down the sink? Did it go in the garbage? How many Shabbos seudas are spent finding the mommy's ring, and you find that an hour later one of the kids put it on, the kid's a celebrity. Sometimes they got lost, ended up in the tape. Let's just wear it. So some people have this minig that they keep the rings in their mouth. So you have nose rings, earrings, mouth rings, but it's not a good idea because you can't make a bracha juggling 3 rings in your mouth. So that's, it won't lose it, but it's not a good idea. So here we come to a really interesting point. The Reikeach, one of the Rishayim, says, what's the problem? Keep the ring on. Because Me'ikid Din, he says, all you have to wash is the 2/3 of the finger. So the ring area is below the chiyuv netilas. So he's really makel that you don't have to wash the upper part of the finger. But for us, it doesn't work. So listen to an interesting Tosefta. The Torah in Kuf Samachal quotes a Tosefta mikvois that rings that are roughly, that are loose, no problem. Because you're wearing the ring, but the water gets under the ring. But if it's mehudak, if it's tight, is a chatzitza. Zok the Rosh. So wait a minute. Even if the ring is tight, frek the Rosh, Torah quotes the Rosh. Even if it's tight, but it's a miyut she'einei makpid. So kolshkein rough, but even miyut should be, even tight should be okay. Zok the Rosh a chiddush. Since sometime when she makes challah, when she needs the dough, you take off the ring. So that's considered makpid. Now this is a chiddush, but it's all the parties can agree to this. How often do you make challah? It's a material. Once there's a time that you're makpid, even if it's not 24/7, it's a miyat ha-makpid. You'll ask me, what's the svar? I think it's masuk midvash. To make something miyat and makpid mutter, Rashi, it has to become part of your guf. If you don't keep this ring on always, you take it off when you make challah. Rather, the kafachayim says lav dafka. Kneading, the Mechaber doesn't mention the word kneading, and when women go swimming, take off the ring, whatever it is, once you take it off sometimes, it's not part of you. So here we understand why a tight ring is a miyut hamakpid, and therefore, it's a problem. You'll ask, okay, you're saying it's makpid, but why don't we say this is like lanoi? Why is it different than nail polish? So the teretz really is pashut, we just said it. Nail polish, you want it on, lanoi of the nail. The ring, you can't say it's bottled because you take it off sometimes. Rav Vosna in his Sefer on Hilchos Nida, Kuf Tzadik Ches Chav Gimel, he says maybe the chilik is, this is a real lumdish chilik, that the nail polish is noi for the nail, so it's bottled the nail. The ring is noi ha person, not of the finger. But he writes v'tzarech birur. I think it's more pashut. Once you take it off occasionally, so then it's not bottled. But the Maisa, I did see, and I must tell you, Rabbi Yashiv in the Ashrei Ish Lamed Aleph Dalid and the Orletzian in Yud Aleph Yud both say, if you have an Isha that tells you, I never take off this ring, even when I make dough, even if I go swimming, I never take off the ring. If it's roughly, if it's roughly taka. If it's even mahudik, it's kasha as is, because lamaisa it is taka a miyut she'einei makpid. The Mishnah Berurah writes in Sifkat Yutes, even a man, if a man wears a ring, and typically there's no even toy, it's just regular rings, he doesn't have to take off the ring because he never takes it off, even when he makes challah. I mean, even if he would make dough. So you see already a precedent. If a person never takes off his ring, even mahudik is okay. Okay. What? Doesn't take it off when she goes to the mikvah? So that we do. That we do only because of chumrah, but it's not like it's part. Okay, good, you're right. The Maisa, the minig Yisraels, we don't take off. We do take off the rings, but I would say just practical, help more in shalom bayis. It's good for the nashim to find a place in the kitchen, not on top of the garbage, not on top of the sink, a place that even if you forget, is you know where you put it. Every Shabbos a different place. But now in my house, this Shabbos you had the problem. Where it is, so it's really a lot of Agmas Nefesh. Shabbos is the wrong time for that Agmas Nefesh. Find a special place that even if it falls down, not into the sink, into the garbage, the kids can't take it. So then I'm leaving that for the Andash to find eitzes. But what's interesting is the Kafachayim Sifkat and Lamed Aleph points out that the minig used to be, you see it in Tanakh, Shulchan Aruch, that men wore rings. Why did it stop all of a sudden? Because even men were concerned about chatzitza. So you see how the focus we have to avoid chatzitza. I should mention something beautiful. The Or Letzion says if an Isha is convinced that she doesn't take off the ring, she gets washed with the ring on, but you have to use a revius of water. Why? I thought you don't need you just need a revius for both hands. So he says there's a problem if you wash with less than revius, so the water a little bit might get under the ring, come back and passel the hand. So if you want to keep the ring on, whatever case is, you have to use a revius. Now you think, oh, how can you have to use a revius? How much is a revius? 3 ounces. Half of these coffee cups, half of this is 3 ounces. I measured in today's washing cups, they have different sizes, but there's minimally 7 revius, and some of them have 10 revius. Why people have to fill up the cup 3 times to wash, I can't imagine. Maybe it's Sabar al-Chaim with other people waiting to wash. That's the only accomplishment, but it's 10 revius. But if you do have to wash with a ring on, whatever the case is, use a revius, a generous amount of 3 ounces. Now, Lamaisa, the next question is, this is all mehudik. How about a ring that's roughly? So the Ramah says, no haguk tzas lahakol. You can't go wrong. But the kiddush is the Beis Yosef, and there are more quotes of Beis Yosef also, that even roughly, we're worried, you don't know to make sure that it's roughly, or you might end up washing even mehudik. Like it's a funny, a gezerah. The whole of the yadayim is drabanim. And miyat hamakbid is drabanim. But you might be ein a makbid that's really a makbid. So you see, in a certain sense, we are careful to make the netilah proper. So the Ramah does say, even though nahaguk tzas lahakol, the minig is that we take off rings even roughly. But one thing should be pashut. Mr. Brewer says it. But if someone wash with a ring that's roughly, then you yaitza. And zicha, don't wash again with another bracha. That's for sure. A finger that's swollen, we have this shaila sometimes, and it's either impossible to get off now, or you have to work very hard. So the emes is by tefillah of nashim, you'll have to cut the ring. This is a pretty standard procedure. But for us, we have a pasha de'etza, and that is the rush. Since it's not going anywhere, this ring, it can't come off, maybe if its swelling goes down, so we have the rush. Now, don't tell your wife or daughter, you don't have to take off the ring because like that finger's amputated. That's going to scare them. But that's the svara. This is kamisha nikta. If the ring cannot come off in the very near future, it's no worse than a retiyah, and wash gesund tehait over the ring. Just don't forget to use the revias like we said earlier. Now, lamaisa, the people like a kula, I'll tell you, Rav Shlomo Zalman, Alichas Shlomo, and Alichas Pesach, Tessa, Wahar 183 says, the nashim could be told that for the karpas, by the Seder night, that you don't have to take off the ring. That's only really a hiddur, but basically women take off rings even roughly, but the evad roughly would be okay. A very tight fit, leave it and wash over it. Another interesting kula regarding netilas yadayim, unlike tefillah, is what's called in English cuticles, which means the little strands of skin that are in the vicinity of the nails. So the emphasis, the Chachmas Adam in Kuf Yotes Tezayin, even regarding tefillah's makel, goes at a miyat sheina makbid. But regarding tefillah, we take off every miyat sheina makbid. But the poskim seem to say the minig is, Rav Vaseline says this regarding netilas yadayim, that lamaisa, even though the Chachmas Adam is makel regarding tefillah, we take off all these cuticles. But regarding netilas yadayim, it seems that we are not even machmer at all. If you have a little cuticle, unless it's mamish, so something that's makbidi, it bothers him. But regularly, you notice people wash, they don't take off the dirt under the fingernails, they don't take off the cuticles. This is the fact that a shtickle of a kula, netilas yadayim versus tefillah. A fascinating question also is the question of ink. A person has ink on his finger from his pen. Does he have to take it off chatchila? B'diavad, does he have to rewash? So this ink on a person's hand should be a makbid, a miyat makbid. I hope it's not a roiv yad, but a miyat makbid is bad enough. And the truth is, in Shulchan Aruch, Archayim, by us, Siv Beis, and in Yeridei Kuf Tzadik Ches, the yoy hayavesh, dried ink, is a chatzitza. Lach is not, because the water penetrates, but the yoy is a chatzitza. So what's the shaila? We should all be busy taking the ink off our hand before we wash. But for us, I could say shtei tshuvas b'dava. First of all, if a person is by part of his job is writing, if he's a bandaid and he's writing chidushim or notes, and a working person who's not on computers but he writes with a pen, so maybe that would be the het of uman. And taka, interestingly enough, the Munkach and Mukar Chaim Kuf Samachal of Beis, and a really interesting shtickle, he says, what's considered uman? The Magen Avram says, if you write tadir, then it's not a chatzitza. What's tadir? So he writes that his father, the Darkei Tshuva, that wrote a whole day and night, his classic svarim, but he was machmer to remove the ink. But Iyul Garmei David, you don't have to worry about it. Then he says something really fascinating, that he heard from his father, that the sons of the Divrei Chaim, if you notice, his handwriting is very interesting. It's very big, almost illegible. Why? So they said his father heard from the Divrei Chaim that he was very worried about chatzitza, even though he was wrote the whole day. So he held the pen in the upper part of the hand, something like this. So it's not near a place that he'd get a chatzitza. So he kept his hand, the pen away, maybe like this probably, but he kept the ink away from his finger. Like we typically hold it like on the left like this. So you might get the ink on your hand. But he held it something like this. So there wouldn't be a problem of ink on the hand. So it came out that he has big lettering, it's a little modern. That's what he writes. But Dr. Munkacha, even that's a chumrah, because he was a writer, and it's not a chatzitza. But for us, in Tavshin Pei Gimel, we have a much bigger heta. And that is the olden day ink, and even today, of Safras ink, you notice, you learn the word in Gittin, it has ingredients. It's a yesh bei mamish. Don't ever do this, but trust me, the lettering on a Sefer Torah is sticking out, because there's a certain density, a certain thickness to it. But today's ink is a davar she'ein bei mamish. And Zok Chut Hashani Kuf Tzadik Ches Chav Gimel from the Sinkarelitz, today's ink is a ein by mamish. Ein by mamish is not a chatzitza. You know, I'll give you a sabra sa'oizin. You know, if a person has a nasty stain on his finger, on his hand, whatever, so after a few days it's gone because the skin replenishes and regrows. If you notice, a tattoo stays forever. What's the pshat? Because they put it below the dermal level, right? So that's taka a tattoo. But regular ink, ein by mamish, is not above the skin. It's absorbed into the pores of the skin. And the interesting thing is the machzah shekel already. And Sivkot and Ches, he didn't have our ink, but he quotes Shach and Taz and Yeredeya that both say, if you have a tseva that's ein by mamish, it's not a chatzitza. The only paint that's a chatzitza is a yesh by mamish. Let's say you scraped off the paint, now you have a discoloration. Discoloration is ein by mamish. But I did find, ironically enough, that Darkei Tshuva himself, Sivkot and Yeredeya, Kuf Tariches Sivkot and Nun Gimel, he says, our inks, diyoi sheyesh ata, dak kamoy mayim, ein shum aviyoi, there's no thickness, is not a chatzitza. So Darkei Tshuva already had it, and of course today in our times, which makes his chumrah more astonishing. Not only he was a uman, but he was also ein by mamish. But iu da'avid l'gaimehu da'avid. And Taka, I saw the Buchacha also says about ink, or Moshe Chelik Beis Kuf Yud. So a writer has two aterim, ein by mamish and also uman. What I think is pashut, I didn't find the first, I think it's pashut. Let's say a person is very particular and he's makbid not to have pen marks on his hand. So it sounds problematic, but it's not. Because makbid, he makbid hair. If there's no chatzitza, you're makbid about what? Is it ein by mamish? And that's why even if you have a permanent mark, a stain, l'chayra, it's the same ein by mamish. I hope if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I think if it's an ein by mamish, it's not a chatzitza. So who cares your makbid? Now, the issue what comes, sometimes people have this problem, they notice Friday night they have ink on their hands, and they want to take it off. Why should I wash with the stain? So the truth is, it's kosher the way it is. But you come into another problem. There's a Chai Adam, says a kiddush, which everybody wonders about, but the Chai Adam is Chai Adam, in Klal Mem Siv Ches, that it seems that he holds that rubbing off ink from a hand is moichik, even though there's no lettering. Now, how can it be moich without lettering? So that's what the Achrayim asked. Apparently, he held that since you're making the place that you could write on it, removing ink is also moichik. Okay, others ask, as a cleaning hand also. But the Maisa, if you have an ink stain, ignore it. It's not a chatzitza. Rubbing it off, although Taka the Welt is mekel, that's not chatzitza, it's not no mechik without lettering, but you have a chayadam to tell you not to remove that ink. We once had a shaila, a child went to I think it was a amusing park, a ride, And they used to do it, they used to stamp on your hand, whatever, paid, whatever it is. And then Shabbos came, and he has this big lettering on his hand. So that already is a mechika l'chol is to erase it. But then again, ain't by mamish, so ignore it. So that would be the heta, keep it as it is. Now, I don't know if they have it today, but when I was growing up, you dreaded when you got a cut, they'll put on mercurochrome on your hand. It left like a red stain for like a week. I don't know if it ever helped, but it definitely left a stain, the zeichel l'churban. So as bad as that sounds, that's only ein by mamish. That's chazusa lav milsa. Question, every Shabbos and Yom Tov, you make kiddush, unless you're very perfect, some of the wine spills on your hand. Do you have to first rinse off the wine and then wash, or just wash with the wine on your hand? So the chayra, wine on your hand is a makbid. You shake someone's hand with wine on the hand, it's not nice. You don't want wine on your hand, it's not bottled to you. And taka de chazaynish in dinim anhagas yud ois vav. And I saw also in Yoshe from Chaim Greineman writes about the chazaynish that he was makbid to rinse his hand from the wine before he made kiddush. Now this is a kiddush that's hard to accept. Before I made it this time, sorry. But this is a kiddush that's hard to accept. Because the base Yosef and Yeridei Kuf Tzadik Ches, in the new print, is next to Ois Tezov, the Machzul Yoy, it says, Yayin Einoi Nidvak, Yayin doesn't stick to the hand, and therefore, it's not a chatzitza. So the base Yosef already writes, and that's the accepted opinion, that a Yayin that's lach, that's liquidy, that yet dry, is washed off with the washing. So why do you have to take off the wine before you wash? And taka the heintige poiskim are mekel. And the truth is, I think the biggest raya is that the Shulchan Aruch tries to mention the common chatzitzas. L'chayre, if wine is a chatzitza, that's the most common chatzitza. It's every Shabbos and Yom Tov. You make kiddush. So it seems like lamaisa, if the wine has not yet dried, you could wash over it, and it's lach, and it's not a chatzitza. What did the Chazon Ish hold? So if you look at the Lashon of the Imre Yosh from Rabbi Greineman, he writes, he was afraid that the wine had dried in the interim. So dried, tak is a problem. Maybe the Chazon Ish was makbid. He was takamaphonic, maybe. And what's also probable, that's a really different shia, but the Chazon Ish was makbid before he washed to dry his hands from any water and dry the keilim. So, because he held whatever, that would aggravate the netilas. No, wine is not better than water. So the Chazon Ish, taka was mach, we understand it, but the minig ha'olam seems to be, some people do taka, rinse it off or dry it off, but if the wine has not yet dried, and you're not makbid, you can wash over it and keep it as it is. When someone has a cut, someone just asked me, he has a chapped skin, and whenever he washes it starts to bleed. So pardon me, but blood is taka chatzitza. There's a makbid, blood is not pleasant. Now, the Gilyam Ashah in Yeridei Kuf Tzadik Ches Yudalit says why the blood is mo'us and it's makbid. Now, I did see the Lochas Ketanis in Siman Chav, Tshuva Siman Chav. He says, but a moil that has blood on his hand, that's a badge of honor. That's like a lanoi. Now, some say even a mitzvah, it's nice to have a mitzvah, but it's still not pleasant. So, try to dry off blood b'chlal. But b'di'evet, if someone washed over moist blood, l'chayre, it washed it away. But again, if it's bleeding, and especially if it's dried blood is a vaday, a miyut, hamakbid, because it's taka unsightly. A splinter is talked about in tevilas noshim. Here in Shulchan Aruch, we don't find anything about it, but the basic klal is a splinter that's below the dermal level, below the skin level, is not a problem, because we don't say kolaroy lebila regarding that finger. So you can leave it as it is, and especially on Shabbos, don't take it out, it'll start to bleed. Wash over the splinter. If the splinter is partially protruding upwards, sticking out of the skin, so wherever the splinter is touching, whatever that area is not being washed. So that has to be removed. That's a miyut hamakbid, because you definitely don't want the splinter to remain. Regarding a bandaid, a splint, or a cast, anything, an obstruction on the hand, again, regarding tefillah, that's a different sugya. But for us, this is mamish the rush. Where the rush says that anything you will not remove because of tsar, because of pain, because you can't, is kamisha nikta. So whether it's a bandaid, gauze pad, splint, cast, if it's not coming off in the near future, leave it as is. Even if it's roiv yad, we saw a prima godlim, Rashlam Zalman, that is takabatel. I once saw this interesting shaila where a bacha broke his hand. He did a good job, and he had like a little few fingers sticking out like Zeichel L'Chorban. Mamash, you can just barely see his fingers. I told him, great, you're going to make a perfect netilah today. Wash your left hand entirely, and whatever you could of the right hand. Because as far as the halacha is concerned, all you have to wash is those fingers sticking out. So he made a perfect netilah. Does he make a bracha? Avada. Why not? He washed the entire netilah. A tricky question, person has a cast on totally, whatever, or he has an obstruction on the entire right hand, let's say. So Avada has to wash the left hand, right? Does he make a bracha when he washes only the left hand? He can't wash any part of the right hand. Why not? Right? If he has to, yadayim. What's the nusach of the bracha? So you'll be allowed, and you say, well, Lagabi tevilas, keilim. I've only told you one keilim. Shulchan Aruch says you make a bracha tevilas keilim. So maybe here also you make a bracha tevilas yad. But there's a big makom l'chalik. There is no mitzvah to wash one hand. A yid has two hands. But there is a mitzvah deraisa to tevel one keilim. If you buy one cup, you tevel it. So tevilas keilim is correct. Netilas yad is incorrect. Nebuch, this person has a problem, but there's no mitzvah netilas yad. So he writes a tevilah. So the minig is to make a tevilas yadayim on one hand. Someone asked me a tricky question. He has a wart, and he has to keep a medicine on top of it, and the medicine dries and stays for quite a while. So that is a miyut that's makbid l'chayra, because he doesn't want it to be, noticeable. Again, he covers it over, and that little layer is a yeshbei mamish. Unless you'll say it's like the retiya, which is not logical, this is something that he's makbid about. So better, if he could, to either remove before or wash before he puts on the medicine. A big question in Hilchas Tahara is a big question, but for us it's very common. A person has chapped hands or chrei stam, they use moisturizer and cream. Today it's a whole business of putting things on your hand. So the basic klal is that if there's something there, it's a chatzitza. Even though you want it l'refuah, but that's not a heta. Every chatzitza you want there for a reason. It has to be something that's bottled to the guf l'noi. And that the poskim say that the fact that you want it l'refuah doesn't make it l'noi. So if you know that basically you have a thick layer, then you have to remove it. If you smeared it in, so then taka, it's ein by mamish. I know it's there. It's in the pores of the hand, but it's taka. If there's no layer, discernible layer, it's okay as it is. There might be a ma'at shebamat, so the bialach is a ma'at sheba'at is bottle. So basically, you have to be careful that there shouldn't be a discernible layer that might be a chatzitza. We have a shayla in the yeshiva, the bachim, in the camp, they play ball, then they want to wash for bread. So they have like sweat on their hands. So again, if the sweat is moist, it's like any other davalach that you wash right off. If it's taka hardened dirt and it won't come off, that's taka the miyat hamakbet, and it should be a problem. Last question I found really fascinating, and people have this today, and today it's more common, they start making stitches for a little cut, for a cut, whatever it is, but he had like a minor surgery / stitches, and there are stitches now in his hand. Now, if anybody that knows a little about these stitches, it's a pretty harrowing experience. They basically take a needle with a surgical thread and they sew up the hand, literally. So there's no doubt about it that stitches in Hilchas Tahara are a chatzitza, especially if there's excess sticking out. But even if, let's say, it was done neatly, but no one wants stitches to be part of the hand. So that's taki, you have to ask a shayla in Hilchas Tahara what to do. But the poskim say that regarding tefillas yadayim, there are 2 points to realize. Because typically, regarding a minor surgery, the stitches, today they're starting to use more and more dissolvable stitches, which, believe it or not, pshutay kemashmoy. They stitch the hand with a thread, looks like a regular surgical thread, but it's dissolvable. After the desired time, it just dissolves, and it's no longer there. So here, I saw from the Gedolei HaPoskim, Rav Vaseline Chelik Tes Kuf Ayin Zayin, Shlomo Zalman in Shlochot Shem Refuah Gimel Yud, Rav Sternbach and Aleph Tuf Kaf Ches. It says even regarding tevilas noshim, dissolvable stitches are not a chatzitza for 2 reasons. The worst chatzitza that could be in stitches is that where the thread goes over the skin, that little area is obstructed. But that's a miyut, makbid. But when you have a dissolvable stitches, which lemaisa goes away, so you're not to take it out, you forget about it, you don't care about it, because it's there for its purpose and gone when you don't need it. So they call that a miyut she'enei makbid, because you don't care about it. Stitches that you have to remove, it's mamish getting you nervous when you think about it. I have a foreign item in my hand. So they call it a miyut she'enei makbid. Plus, when you wash over it and you have to keep it for the next 2 days, they apply the svar of the rush. That this, since you can't take it out, you won't take it out. So for these moments, this area is like nikta yadayim. So dissolvable stitches is not a problem. And the truth is, even if you have non-dissolvable, but if you can't take it out and there's no excess string above the level, you could rely on the rush wash over the stitches, nikta yadayim, and it's okay. Guten Tag to you. Shemin? Take a look at the last share for this month. This month. You saw the zettel? Take a look at the zettel.
Shem irgendwie tell you be a secret of Smith for today's share. After Kaddish, or Smith will say, seek him of today's share to have the schus sponsoring share. Call irgendwie 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Und kann anjewen a kasha immer. Was sagt das Bochel der Sache ist so viel hier mit dem mit schnell an der Hofes am cuticle. Yakov Terriade.
Kaddish?
Anyone?
Hey. Amen. Hey, shmei Rabbi Barach.
Unless you have a revious water.
We'll talk about it. That's beautiful. That's a whole shit.
Sorry?
Left it out because it's a whole shit for itself. It's upcoming. I don't.
So how do you reconcile?
Both people don't wash their hands.
What? Don't
Your
they
mouth?
dry?
No.
Sure, 100%.
Okay.
You stand by the table, you go right. No.
How we doing? It's good to see you. I just use the zayda August Abayis. I just use the zayda August Abayis. So discuss them. I made this lot. Okay.
Okay. Rabbi say, could not to be mafsik between the she and the sikkim. It shouldn't be any double chaitzis. We're going to start the sikkim right away.
Let's just review what we learned Bez Hashem today. First of all, netilas yadayim is maybe like a mini tefila, but it's not similar to the tefila or hechsher. It's basically a chazal masakin, a mini tefila to wash the hand or the parts of the hand that might touch the bread. That's the accurate definition of the chiyuv, and you must wash the whole hand. That's chayiv. There's no netilas chatzayin. That's number one. Number two, there is chatzitza like by tefila, but the chiyuv is limited to the part that might touch the bread. La'alocha, we do wash the whole hand, even though yesh makilim only the finger, but basically the whole, whatever has to be washed in one time. There is a chatzitza, you can't remove it and just wash that area. Ein netilas chatzayin. A bandaid or any obstruction, even the cast that cannot be removed, that part is not chayiv, as the Rosh explains. That's not a chatzitza because it's not chayiv in netilas. It's like the elbow that's not chayiv in netilas. This is the big chilek between tefila and netilas yadayim. The heter retiyah is only for netilas yadayim because that's not a chayiv in netilas yadayim. Tefila, there is a problem with the retiyah. Chatzitza, midarais is only roiv and makbid, midabanan either miyut that's makbid or roiv she'enei makbid. Miyut she'enei makbid, the svara is it becomes part of you, so it's not a chatzitza. Long nails are typically not a chatzitza. The problem is the dirt under the long nails that can be seen when the finger is held upright position. We don't clean the dirt that's typically accumulating in the fingernails. I forgot to mention a scab also, even though by tefila the child should be asked, but for washing you leave scabs and all this, unless it's a makbid, leave it as it is. Netilas yadayim, we we are makbid, again, of course we careful take out all chatzitzas, but the miyat sheini makbid, we basically ignore and leave it as it is. If I'm makbid and no one else is, so then there's no batla daitai. If I'm not makbid, Mishabur holds also that it's a problem of chatzitza. Nail polish until it starts to peel is not a problem. A woman has a special heta, even if it's roiv yadai, because that's not a makbid at all. Wax, paint, glue, and the like is a miyat hamakbid. B'diavad, you have to wash over with a bracha if it was on the fingers as opposed to the rest of the hand. There's a heta of matche b'mat that we do say because that is insignificant and non-existent, and certainly not to be too nervous about any type of chatzitza. Ring should be removed in all situations. B'diavad, if you wash with a ring that's roughly and you use the revius, which typically we do, so then the tevila is kosher and you don't have to wash over. If you can't get off the ring, either because it's mamash there for a while or just for a day or two, but it's like a nikta yadai, and wash over the ring and make a bracha, the regular bracha. Cuticles were not makbid until yadayim. Today's ink, permanent marker, stamps are an aim by mamish, and you don't have to worry about removing it. Wine, I think the place by makel, you don't have to remove the wine unless it dries and it's a makbid. Blood is typically makbid, it should be washed off unless it's mamish liquidy. A splinter below the surface, it's okay. Anything above the surface should be removed. A bandaid, splint and cast, or can't be removed, keep it as it is. If you only wash one hand, al netilas yadayim, as the bracha said. Ointments, cream, Vaseline, if there's any mamish above the surface, should be removed. Sweat that's liquidy washes off. And stitches, even, and certainly dissolvable, even non-dissolvable, if you could wash it and you take off any excess, that would be a miyat she'enei makbid, and you could be saimach on the rush that it's not a problem of chatzitza.